Hello everyone. Okay, I think you can all hear me. So this is actually my second time in Serbia. First time was somewhere around 10 years ago. I was a student on some extra trip, like an exchange. It was fun. It was in Niš, so somewhere at the south, if I remember correctly. And it was very fun. And today in Novi Sad, it's also fun. So thank you, all the organizers, for pulling off such an amazing conference. And honestly, this is one of the best screens I've presented on. So thank you to all of the organizers of Armada JS. So before I start, this talk is about super apps and React Native. So my question is, how many of you used React Native at least once? React Native or Expo? Wow, that's a lot. I actually didn't expect this many. And how about React itself? Who's building React? Yeah, that was about as I expected. All right, so a few things about me. I'm leading open source efforts and research and development at Callstack. Our open source partnerships with React Native core team, React core team, and so on and so forth. And for many years, I've contributed to libraries like Jest or Styled Components or React Native CLI, and a bunch of different React Native libraries out there. So one of my favorite things about React Native is that you can ship stuff really fast for all platforms at the same time. And as you add new features, things start to get a little slower, and they start to take more time. There's more planning, coordination, coding, testing, maintenance involved, and naturally, you start to ship a little slower. So your managers probably figured that we need to hire more developers to get more stuff done. And new teams are formed around new features, and so you keep on shipping, and your company decides to grow even more to new markets that you previously didn't know about exist, and serve them experience tailored to their regional interest. So even more teams are formed, and now you can find yourself in a small or large, depending how you look at it, team of 50, 100 front-end engineers working on the same app. And the teams that allowed you to ship more frequently are blocked by each other because you work on the same product. You work in a single repository, maybe. And it's increasingly harder to ship fast. So we release slower and slower and slower. And does it sound familiar? I hope not if you're building a React Native app, because usually they're not that big. But if it does, I have a message for you. You are a super app, probably, and you have super problems. But what the heck is a super app? So you can find many definitions online, but seriously, super app is a buzzword for really big applications that ship a lot of functionality under one umbrella host application. And the functionality is sometimes related, sometimes not. Sometimes it's loaded dynamically with web views, for example, but oftentimes not. And there's no rules here. They're just big apps. To some extent, I like to think about super apps as cities, organisms that live their own life, which one person or one team cannot control or even comprehend. One team, however, can control the infrastructure to guide the direction that the city is going. And this is Belgrade from the International Space Station. I think it looks beautiful. I didn't find the Novi Sad, I'm sorry, but it's the closest I could find. A typical super app will integrate a variety of services that are relevant to particular users, because there's likely no single user that needs all of those features. And the super app concept is popular in Asia for whatever reasons. WeChat, for example, from China, being a chat, social network, payment provider, and it can even handle insurance for you. There's Alipay, also from China. It's a payment app that evolved into everything app, allowing you to handle travel, shopping, and integrating with third-party apps like Uber. There's Grab in Vietnam, Indonesia, Southern Asia, generally, and it handles transportation, food delivery, and digital payments. And these apps are often described as everyday apps for everything. Look at WeChat alone. Its feature set is massive. So has its app size of 600 megabytes on iOS. And super lot of users already use super apps. Apparently, this is what people want in the East, right? But guess what? It's not only the East. We have Uber, for example, which is a ride-hailing, scooters, food delivery, everything but around delivery. We have Revolut, everything around finance. We have a Polish accent, because originally I'm from Poland, Krakow, beautiful city, you should check it out. And it's about everything around buying things online. And we also have Facebook, which is a social networking with marketplace and dating, everything around social experiences. And these apps serve billions of users. It's just that in the West, we apparently like lots of services scoped around a rather single theme than for everything. Okay, now that we know that our app is potentially a super app with super problems, what can we do about our time to ship? And before jumping into some quick solutions, it's worth to realize that, in fact, we are dealing with organizational issues here. It's excessive communication, sharing resources, onboarding, conflicting pull requests, and ownership problems on who owns which part of the code base or the feature. And similar to cities that grow and expand, it's probably time for our app to organize and introduce some first-class architecture, decentralized ownership, deployments, and many more. I never become an architect for various reasons, but the real reason is money. But now I can architect software, so yay me. Organization of large teams is generally solved on the server world with microservices. It's, of course, not a single bullet. It has its downside, but it has its real nice upsides. And since humans are great at copying from each other, it's also solved on the web with micro-frontends. Similar trade-offs. And as React Native developers, we're actively encouraged by the idea of React to bring improvements from one platform to another. For example, while working on the new architecture of React Native, the core team took lessons learned from implementing the view hierarchy flattening mechanism that's available today on Android and moved it to the core C++ layer of React Native. So now, with the new architecture, it's available almost for free for iOS as well, bringing improvements there. And similarly, we bring web technologies and ideas that power React apps to mobile world. So maybe we could solve micro frontends and bring them to the native as well. So let's think about what needs to happen for micro frontends to live in the native realm. So to do it, we really need a dynamic feature delivery because we don't want to ship unnecessary code to our users. Now, Android supports it in the form of the mechanism called feature delivery for Play Store, which is quite limited and not generally encouraged by the platform owners, by the way. Both platforms, however, support web views to load web content dynamically, and this is what Uber and Alipay are doing, and what's possible with Ionic portals, for example. It has its benefits, but we lose the native feel of the platform. And finally, we can leverage hybrid JavaScript frameworks like React Native that happen to run a dynamic language which can load over the air and update itself at runtime. Thank you, JavaScript. So for convenient dynamic delivery, we need automated code splitting and async bundle loading. There's nothing preventing us from this feature implemented inside the space of Metro, which is the default bundler for React Native. The APIs are there. It's also probably implemented somewhere at Meta in their infra team. On the other hand, there are alternative bundlers that have the first-class support for dynamic code loading. And here I would love to tell you that we solved code splitting for Metro natively in React Native. But it turns out that 6 years ago, we created Whole, which was an alternative CLI for React Native using Webpack as a bundler. Both React Native and Webpack, thankfully, are so flexible that it was possible to integrate together despite the tight integration between React Native runtime and Metro bundler. And isn't that amazing, actually? We can use that to not reinvent the wheel. And it also turned out that Whole is not that great either. It lacks proper hot model replacement support, struggled with implementing fast refresh, and it was very challenging to support Webpack 5 at the time, with one of its most anticipated features, module federation. And I told you that web solved micro frontends, but I didn't tell you that there is no single solution, and they all have trade-offs. The one that we found that has the best overall developer experience is module federation specifically. It introduces separate builds for the same app, allowing for more independent teams and deployments, and sharing code between apps without ever touching NPM registry. The creator of Module Federation, Zach Jackson, shares our experiences as well, where we couldn't keep up with the shipping pace which we had in the past with a smaller team, and was kind enough to also speak on our podcast, which I invite you to try and listen. We're doing whatever we can so it's interesting and entertaining. and insightful for you. And to implement module federation in React Native, we needed to rewrite whole from scratch. And that's how Repack was born. By shifting more responsibility to the users and leveraging the plugin system of the React Native CLI that our team was just rebuilding at the time, we could focus on bringing necessary web-compatible Webpack plugins to React Native. And with Repack, we can develop something that we call Federated Super Apps, optimized for highly distributed teams, independent deployments, and delivering only the JavaScript that users really need. Thanks to Repack, our app can still grow in functionality that's relevant only to particular users without having all the users to pay the cost of the app size. And at the same time, it allows for smaller, lean teams that can work in isolation on their features or so-called mini apps, even in separate repositories. The teams can choose whether to run the full app or just work in scoped environment of their own mini applications. We found most developers prefer isolation and such setups of the big organizations, which allows for faster feedback loop, onboarding, and less distractions. However, it's not required to use separate repositories. There are teams that thrive in monorepos and can handle its complexities and its benefits. There's quite an even split in the proponents of monorepo versus polyrepo approach, and module federation supports both. What's important is that the teams are able to deploy their code on their own pace without being blocked by each other. And for the host app, our super app, to be able to pick versions it wants to load over the air. And to ensure the host app loads your code not tampered by bad actors, Repack signs all the remote JavaScript bundles, similar to how Code Push is doing, if you're familiar with that service. It's automated, and you're also the ones in control. It's almost like developing for a web browser, but in the native realm. And think about it. Your users can get the latest bug fixes and some smaller features without doing anything and without re-downloading the whole bundle, which can easily take up to 40 megabytes for apps like Discord, for example. Picking the correct version requires coordination with a server that serves the bundles and automates the deployment. And module federation in React Native requires some runtime setup as well. And since Repack is a bare-bones toolkit for Webpack plugins and loaders, we recently open-sourced a showcase for you to try this setup on your own, providing all the necessary wiring for Federated Super App. Check the experience and let us know if you like it or come into any challenges on your own. If you want to try it in your app, you can run the init command or follow the Getting Started guide in Repack documentation. Next step would be to build the module federation plugin for your host app and one for few mini apps. Expose the screens from the mini app that you want to load from the host using the exposes key. And tell Repack where to fetch mini apps from. Add lazy loading with suspense to avoid cascading spinners. And voila, our mini app is now lazily loaded. We see that the mini app container, is loaded first, and the main navigation chunk is, it's not playing. Thank you, Keynote. It should show extra code being loaded, but yeah, even pre-recorded demos don't work all the time, I guess. So your product shouldn't ship slower just because it's big. Repack and Module Federation can rewire your teams and change the way they work for better. And what's most important, to ship fast again. Of course, there are some gotchas and trade-offs. So this is for really big teams only. We rarely see teams smaller than 70 front-end engineers, not like the whole app team, 70 front-end engineers that need this kind of architecture. Such teams often have their own custom solutions to these problems, and Repack aims at giving them a chance to outsource this piece of infra to an open source library that's well maintained. And you need a dedicated infra team in such case to handle all the wiring, dependencies, upgrades, version compatibility. It's a full-time job. And mini apps are pure JavaScript. They can't load their own native code, only use the one that's shipped with the host application. This is the limitation of the platforms. And Apple App Store won't like you shipping whole full-blown features or just rewriting your app with JavaScript. So you need to be cautious about what you're uploading dynamically. So to recap, super apps are just big applications shipping loads of features for everyone, usually statically or with web views. And federated super apps are optimized for dynamic feature delivery and shipping only the necessary code to the users. Code that renders fully native experiences thanks to React Native. And they use Repack and Module Federation to orchestrate building and releasing modules independently. All of this dynamic code is code signed. Both monorepo and polyrepo are supported, and we have a reference showcase for you to try. Thank you.